Majority Leader Harkam.
Here.
Minority Leader Mazzano. Here. Ms. Borgia. Here. Mr. Burrows. Here. Mr. Gelfarb.
Here.
Mr. Kaplowitz.
Present.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Ms. Shimsky.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this particular point in time, we're going to take the opportunity to celebrate the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer celebration this month, celebrating the law's 30th anniversary. And certainly tonight, I am so pleased to welcome our friends in the LGBTQ community to celebrate Pride Month here at the Westchester County Board of Legislators. Tonight, we are also honoring the lot for its 30 years, that's right, 30 years of support, services, and advocacy for Hudson Valley residents. The story of our county's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning community is the story of our fathers and sons, our mothers and daughters, our friends and neighbors who continue to make our country a more perfect union, where equality becomes less a dream and more a reality year after year. It is a story about the struggle to realize that great American promise that all people can live with dignity and fairness under the law. Each June, we commemorate the courageous individuals who have fought to achieve this promise for the LGBTQ Americans and rededicate ourselves to the pursuit of equal rights and equal opportunities for all, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Every generation of Americans has brought our community closer to fulfilling its promise of equality. Last year, Governor Andrew Cuomo was able to achieve marriage equality here in New York, a watershed event indeed, which is followed by several states during the last year. While progress has taken time, our achievements in advancing the rights of LGBTQ Americans remind us all that history is on our side and that the American people will never stop striving towards liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us tonight, and again, I want to express my appreciation for the work of the Loft and commend its staff, past and present, for their noble efforts in the equality movement. I certainly want to recognize one of my friends and a great colleague in the city of Yonkers, who is Councilman Michael Sabatino, who was a leader through the fight for marriage equality. Michael Sabatino. Michael, stand up a second. At this time, I would ask legislators Bill Ryan and Alfreda Williams to approach the podium for the presentation to the law, to its executive director, David Urin. David, come on down. Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this certainly isn't the first time we've gotten together in this chamber with members of the community, and won't be the last. Westchester's blessed with a population that is so diverse and so rich, and we have an opportunity to celebrate that each and every day of the year. Some of the groups and populations in Westchester are so large. Years ago, they actually started to have a day, a ceremony set aside in their honor. And I think probably if we tried to do that every day of the year, we'd run out of days. But we have an opportunity, obviously, to celebrate every day the richness, the diversity of Westchester's population. And today we have an opportunity to do what we've done for a few years now, and that is to set aside time to focus on the tremendous contribution of the LGBTQ community here in Westchester. And What a great contribution that has been, with some real exciting events and highlights along the way, not the least of which was the Michael's and other success that the chairman made reference to a moment or so ago. Elfrida Williams and I, as the legislators for White Plains, take great pride in tonight doing what we do at some of the other ceremonies, and that is try to highlight an outstanding organization that comes from the particular constituency that we're focusing on. And tonight we have the opportunity to be joined by representatives of the Loft here in White Plains, and Legislator Williams and I have the honor of representing White Plains on the county board, the home of the Loft. We've put out a program tonight, and I'd like to share with the members of the audience as well as the viewers that are looking in a brief write-up on the Loft, and let me get right into it. The Loft, a gay and lesbian community center for the Lower Hudson Valley, is being honored for its 30 years of work. I had to do a double take when I read that. I remember when I was first introduced to the Loft, I didn't know it had been 30 years already. I've worked to further the cause for inclusion, diversity, and pride through education, advocacy, and celebration. The Loft operates under the leadership of Board of Directors President Kieran Barden and Vice President Jean Marie Angelo, and Executive Director David Jaren, Director of Programs and Services Scott Havelka, and the Silver Connections Program Manager Trudy Katz, with the help of the rest of the Loft staff and community volunteers. So it's a great pleasure for us to be with such a fine organization tonight in such an important year for them, a real milestone, the 30th anniversary of their important work and contribution to the Westchester County community. Elfrida.
Thank you. I just want to say I add my congratulations to Legislator Ryans. It was my pleasure on Saturday to spend a brief period of time at the Loft for their 30th anniversary picnic, and sorry I had to leave early and miss all that good food, but anyway, I know about the dedication over the years that you've served your community and the tremendous needs of the community. So I add my congratulations again to all of you that have worked so hard to make it a success and to continue the program. And I want to thank you.
Mary, do you want to get a picture of this?
Phil, you don't even blink.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Honorable legislators, thank you too, and special guests, thank you. 30 years is a long time for many organizations, but the birth of organizations come from special needs. And very similar to many of the LGBT organizations and centers throughout the country, ours was born out of sadness and disease, out of the AIDS crisis, when a federal government was ignoring the dying men who had HIV and AIDS. People had to come together to form a need, and a small group of men and women back in 1983 joined forces and said, we need to help this community. Nobody is supplying information about this dreaded disease. Nobody is doing anything, it seems. The CDC was doing some research, but the information was not getting to the specific streams that would need to get down to the community so it could be used. So these people took it on themselves to form a helpline so that gay men and others could call this helpline and get the information that they needed so that they could help protect themselves and their loved ones too. So from that organization, from that small group of people coming together, we now are we have 30 programs and services. We have 50 volunteers who put in over 300 hours a month of community service to their LGBT community, to people that you represent. So we do it, and we do it proudly. We celebrate 30 years of providing these programs and services to the LGBT community. And we are honored, deeply honored, that you are honoring us this evening. So we're here, and you know how to reach me. I've spoken to many of you tonight, and we'll certainly continue a strong relationship with the Westchester County Board of Legislators. And I just want to, again, thank you so much for this honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and the law's continued great service. I also want to recognize another good friend that's here this evening. That's the Executive Director of Center Lane, which is a good friend of ours. Been here many times before, James Stewart. James. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk. Mr. Harcum, on the minutes approval.
Thank you. Would you like to do consent first, Mr. Chair, or would you?
Why not?
All right. On the consent agenda, would move with one minor exception. Page 3, item 1 would add Committee on Public Safety. Other than that, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Harcum. Mr. Mazzano. Thank you, Mr. Mazzano. Mr. Williams.
I am in agreement.
Members, we are on the consent agenda. Mr. Harcum, while you're standing, minutes approval for June 3rd.
Absolutely. The 7 p.m. meeting, so moved.
Members without objection? So ordered. Madam Clerk, public comment.
Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. I ask the speakers come down the aisle to my left to come up to the podium. I have one card, Regina Riley.
My name is Regina Riley. I'm from the 9th Legislative District in Krugers. Just a note of information here. Back in the 1980s, early 80s, I believe, the Catholic Archdiocese of New York, under the auspices of Cardinal O'Connor, allowed Mother Teresa and her sisters to be brought in to start a hospice in New York City for the AIDS patients free of charge. In addition, Cardinal O'Connor himself used to, without fanfare and without any newspaper people around, would go down, don the garb of an orderly, and serve food or empty bedpans or do whatever needed to be done to help these poor patients in their last days. And I'd just like all of us to remember that when we're thinking of the Catholic community. Now to back what I was going to say tonight. The Women's Equality Day Reformed is pleased to announce 2013's Woman of the Year awardee, Martina Marie Parisi. She is a young author and a Westchester native. We thank our sponsors, Gordon Burroughs, Michael Smith, John Testa, and Westchester's own Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the Honorable Sheila Marcotte, for being our sponsors. We also hope that all of the other legislators, especially the ladies, will come and celebrate with us on Friday, August 9th. The Mott Anthony Stanton Award reminds us of the momentous meeting of these women and of the 1848 Seneca Falls Congress of Women. In an NRO article, Catherine Jean Lopez illustrates how Governor Cuomo misrepresents that historical event to promote the abortion industry and its dependent industries that are dependent on the flesh of unborn children. She quotes from she quotes from an interview she had with Carol Crossett, the president of Susan B. Anthony Birthplace Museum, and our speaker when we had our Women's Equality Day reform celebration in the Rotunda many years ago. And this is what Carol Crossett says: "The governor is desecrating holy ground by advancing abortion in Seneca Falls." She then, Carol, quotes from Elizabeth Cady Stanton and says, "We are considered the property of men. We cannot treat our children as our property to destroy as we see fit. What is needed," and she goes on in her own words, "are the resources to support their preborn, not access to destroy them," Carol explains. There is no choice in the governor's abortion expansion bill, but rather a welcome mat to the mass infanticide perpetrators like Kermit Gosnell. So I ask you all to remember that and to get hold of your senators to ask them, please, this is not to help women. This one section is to destroy women, even if they don't realize it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have no other cards.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's go on to unfinished business.
Under unfinished business, the first item, ID number 6057. At the June 3rd, 2013 regular board meeting, this item was postponed to a date certain of June 17th, 2013, appears here for action. From the Committees on Community Services and Legislation, a local law amending the laws of Westchester County in relation to prohibiting housing discrimination based on source of income.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of the lengthy history of this legislation, this topic before the Board of Legislators, the many discussions we have had, the in-depth, careful consideration by all in this chamber, I gave some thought to what might be a statement from the chair of the Legislation Committee that could do a couple of things. One, appropriately summarize what it is that we're doing here tonight, and at the same time be a clear statement of this legislature coming together to deal with a problem, to improve a condition. And I decided that, our committee report, which we're all well familiar with, in fact says it all. There's no need really to reinvent the wheel. In the Legislation Committee and the Community Services Committee coming together to present this for board consideration tonight, members will note that the committee report begins with a statement that reminds everyone that it was the Board of Legislators that adopted the Westchester County Fair Housing Law, which protects Westchester County residents from discrimination in housing on the basis of the suspect classifications that we're all well familiar with: race and color and religion, ethnicity, creed, age, national origin, alienage, citizenship status. We have, however, and the list goes on and on and on, we've discussed them all at length. But tonight, we deal with an item that came to our attention after careful consideration. We were convinced as a board that many residents also experience housing discrimination based on their source of income. So with this local law that is before us this evening for our consideration, I'd like to just say that passage of this law will finally put something into place that I think every single one of us believes is very, very important. And that is, it locks into place the prohibition of source of income discrimination in housing. Simply put, that's it. And it is a very simple statement, but it's such an important one, and it deals with a reality that people face here in Westchester County. So once again, our passage of this locks that prohibition in place. And at this time, the chair of the Community Services Committee, Alfreda Williams, will have a comment or two, and I think that beyond that, there's very little more that will be reported to the board this evening by the two committees that have handled this item for the legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly can echo the words of Legislative Committee Chair Mr. Ryan in discussing this local law. It was reviewed on numerous occasions by this board and of course, most recently in a very long, drawn-out, full discussion in a meeting that was held last month. The law, as it now reads, contains two modifications to the law that was presented some time ago. One of which is the fact that the law now simply exempts landlords and owners of property of 6 or less units. And the last one, of course, is the broadening of the disability clause to read any disability rather than just governmental disability. I think these are significant changes which will make it much less difficult for people to understand what's happening with the law and will provide full coverage for those who have been discriminated against in the past. And I applaud our two committees for having been able to reach consensus on this issue, and I look forward to its passage tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Members on this item. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was a young boy, one of the first things I wanted to be, in fact, probably the very first thing I wanted to be, was not a legislator. I wanted to be a baseball player. And as a child, you think you want to learn everything about the subject. You want to learn everything you know about it. And you become, in your own mind, an expert in the area. And one of the very first passionate discussions, a little bit before, but as I got older, got into, was a question of Roger Maris. Roger Maris in 1961 was chasing the home run record that had been held for so many years by Babe Ruth. And the discussion was, well, if Roger Maris breaks the record, are we going to put an asterisk next to his name? And the debate went on, and as it turned out, they didn't wind up putting an asterisk next to his name. But let's go 30, 40 years down the road, and let's go to to modern day baseball that we have out there now. And now we're in the age of performance-enhancing drugs, and we have home run records being broken left and right at a particular point in time. And again, when we came back and analyzed what was going on, the question was, do we put asterisks next to? As a side, do we put some of these players in the Hall of Fame? Do we put asterisks next to their name because they were in the steroid era? One of the things I really enjoyed over the past year and a half being on the legislature is bringing young citizens through this body. We bring them in, we do the mock legislators. I saw the press release from Legislator Harcum this week that he had done one of them. And they're great. You bring these students in, they're learning about government, they're learning about how laws are made, and they come in very understanding, and they actually do a very nice job. It takes them about a minute and a half to get settled in, They come in, they start processing and having good, vigorous debate. You know, sometimes I think they have better debates than we do at some of the committee tables. But that, you know, we could probably learn something from them from time to time. But one of the things I do with them is that when I bring them into the rotunda, you know, to come into the legislative chamber here to vote, we pause in there and I say, you know, look around and tell me what you see. And I have them make some observations. And one of the observations that comes out is there haven't been a lot of women who have been chairwomen of this body. Let's hope that that's something that changes down the future. But one of the things I wonder about, you know, coming down the road, if when all of us in this legislative body are gone and the plaque for this legislative section is on the wall, and virtually probably everybody in this legislative body is gone at that particular point in time, except for Bernice. Bernice will still be here. But we wonder, you know, I wonder if there's going to be an asterisk next to our name. I wonder if the asterisk is going to be, you know, from some future body looking back on saying that was the legislative body that gave away Westchester citizens' taxpayer rights, gave away their constitutional rights. You know, in the entire time we've had the debate in my session here, in my session in the legislature in the year and a half that I've been here, I have not heard one person, a citizen, a taxpayer, a legislator, say one thing bad about the Section 8 program. No one has spoken bad about the Section 8 program. I don't think anyone has a problem with the Section 8 program. It's a good program. It benefits people. So that's not at issue. You know, it was 4 weeks ago, we had one individual who came up to the podium. He was talking about, you know, some of his issues, and he was speaking on behalf of the source of income legislation. And he was talking about the public benefits that he was receiving. And he stood up there and he said one thing that was very, very interesting to me, which I think forms the foundation of so much of what this discussion is about, you know, certainly for those who are the advocates for it. He stood at the podium and he said, I can't live wherever I want. And I'm sitting here, and, you know, and the format is when public speakers come up, you know, we don't speak back to them in that regard. But I'm sitting at my desk right here myself saying, well, you know what, I have 2 jobs, and I can't live wherever I want either. And the question is, you know, is this legislation about allowing people to live wherever they want? Now, I've heard discussions in some of the committee meetings saying the passing of this legislation, the source of income legislation, will accelerate the county receiving the 7.4 of the community block development grant money from the 2011 allocation. Let's hope that's the case. I don't believe that's necessarily going to be the case. I hope I am absolutely wrong in that, but I don't think that will wind up being going on. The agreement that was placed out and signed by County Executive Spano and approved by the members of the legislative body at that particular point in time said that the source of income legislation would be promoted. Now, why did it say promote? Because any agreement that said an elected official had to sign a piece of legislation would never fly. That couldn't get through the Supreme Court. That would never pass. But we see the same kind of thing going down the path now when we talk about what's going on with the letters from the monitor and the allocations of the Rutgers study. Can you imagine anything that ever got up to the Supreme Court that mandated an elected official, a publicly elected official, to sign a piece of legislation? Why didn't the agreement say that at the time? Because it wouldn't have been illegal. It never would have passed. But now we've got judicial interpretations which can say, well, it needs to be passed. And I've heard in committee meetings that people opine that, well, the legislature is required to pass this legislation. There's no requirement in the affordable housing settlement that says that this legislative body has to pass this piece of legislation. Now, if you find and follow the road where this is going, this is all part of the governmental disparate impact concept that they're following. And this very past, this last week in Washington, D.C., there was a decision that came from the EEOC that went after 2 particular corporations that said these corporations are discriminating against minorities because they're doing background checks. Now, let me tell you what the background checks that these individuals are being screened for. Individuals were being screened for murder, assault and battery, rape, child abuse, spousal abuse, domestic violence, manufacturing of drugs, and weapons violations. Employers, private employers, were screening prospective employees for these violations. The EEOC, following the disparate impact, which is a concept which is the same thing which is coming down from as far as the affordable housing settlement, is following the same logic. Do you want to frequent a business that is hiring murderers, rapists, and child abusers? Now, let's jump on for a second onto the Rutgers study, you know, the much acknowledged Rutgers study that we have good cop, bad cop talking about. We have a letter coming up with 31 letters, personalized letters from Federal Monitor Johnson to communities, the 31 targeted communities, saying, here's your allocation from the Rutgers study. And we don't need to go into great length as to whether the Rutgers study was ever accepted or not. According to my knowledge, I've never seen anything that says it's been accepted by the county. And this is something that we're going to follow going forward. But let's give a simple point of comparison, and let's take it right down to my own district. I represent District 3. One of the most principal communities in my district is a town in Mount Pleasant. So Westchester County, according to the Affordable Housing Settlement, over 7 years is required to build 750 units at a cost of $51 million. Westchester County approximates about 450 square miles and has a population of about 1 million. The annual budget for Westchester County is $1.7 billion, and we have approximately 5,000 employees. One of the communities that I represent is Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant has an allocation of 960 units. They have an annual budget of $41 million, and they have 33 square miles, of which 5 square miles represents water. So if Westchester County has to do 750 with all the resources that it has, how is it possible that Mount Pleasant is going to do 960 with the resources they have and the land and space and square footage they have there? It just simply makes no sense. And the question is, can we honestly believe that what's going on as to whether the federal government really wants Westchester County to succeed? You know, I had the opportunity, many of you were in the Committee of the Whole meeting, and I asked Monitor Johnson, very direct question. I said, have you seen any instances in your studies of zoning that's discriminatory in Westchester County? And he said he hadn't completed his study yet. I asked him a couple more times in a couple different ways, and I got somewhat similar answers, but he didn't answer my question. You know, I've posed the same question on multiple occasions to my fellow legislators, my 16 fellow legislators here, and I said, if any of you are aware of any zoning in your community that you feel is discriminatory, please let me know, and I'll let the monitor know. But to date, I've heard absolutely nothing. I've not heard from one legislator that's been able to represent any zoning in their community that's discriminatory. But meanwhile, this is what the ninth floor and the staff of the county executive has been representing all along to the federal government, that the federal government is saying, geez, we can't accept it. This just doesn't seem right. But not one of us as legislators, those who know, seemingly should know our legislative districts even better than bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., if we can't designate, if we can't identify zoning that's discriminatory in our district, what do we think a bureaucrat, operating from a desk in two-dimensional information is going to be able to identify? I'm very concerned. This vote represents the stripping of our constitutional rights. If Shakespeare was here, he'd be talking about this, a tragedy of epic proportions. Essentially, where HUD is headed is that they are unsatisfied with the information we've been providing to them so far. I don't believe they're going to be satisfied until we say all our zoning is discriminatory in this county. We have not, from our perspective, the county has met every interim benchmark that's out there so far. We are proceeding ahead with a very flawed affordable housing settlement that's out there. I, for one, am going to be voting no on this legislation. I'm going to stand up to the bully in the playground, and I'm going to say I'm not going to go along with this. And I hope in future generations, when the time comes and people, future legislators are touring the 5th and 6th graders that are, looking and studying their government, that they look at the plaque on the wall and they don't see an asterisk next to my name. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Other members? Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While there's much that I would like to respond to, I will not. I will try to stick to the points that I'd like to make here tonight. But I would like to, for the record, say that minorities are not murderers, rapists, and child abusers. Everyone actually works to try to make their lives better. If there are studies that are done that that single out individuals, then they have a right to bring actions before the EEOC. That's what it's about. But let me turn to this legislation to say that I hope that the generations that are going to be looking at this board will proudly say that this Board of Legislators did not abide discrimination. I hope the generations that are going to be looking at this board that said that decent people in this county understands that the veteran who goes to fight off to fight wars so that we might be safe has a right to occupy, to have housing, and has a right not to be discriminated against based on the fact that he receives veteran benefits. I hope the generation will say that senior citizens of this community in Westchester who receives Social Security income and benefits and who use that benefits to pay their rent so they might have a place to live, should not be discriminated against and should have a right to live in housing, should not be discriminated based on the source of their income. I hope that generation will also say that the low-income family who look to Section 8 as a means of finding decent housing should have a place to live, should be able to use those vouchers to obtain housing, and should not be discriminated against. And that the disabled person who is suffering along with disability might be able to find housing in this county, and that this county board did not put on blinders or turn its back and say, we don't care about you, you're on your own. That we did not sit around and said, it is okay to discriminate against a person because they have a disability. We didn't turn around and say that you are different from us and therefore we don't care about you. No, I hope that generation will be proud to say they live in a county that cares about all. They live in a county that is tolerant, a county that is concerned about all of its citizens, regardless of their socioeconomic status. I believe that that history would be worth recording. The opposite, I submit, would not be history I would like this county to be known for. History that is equivalent to that we have witnessed in Birmingham, Alabama, not so long ago. History that this county, that we've experienced in this county not so long ago with the housing situation in the city of Yonkers. And history that we all strive to make, to kind of turn our backs from and say that we're not associated with this. Here tonight, we have an opportunity to take a stand to do what is right and to say that Westchester County is not a county that is supportive of discrimination in any form that it takes, in any form that it takes. That we will not turn our backs on people simply because they might not have the resources and the same level and the same type of income to pay for housing as we do. And I believe that is, I am proud to be able to stand up and vote yes for those principles, but because those principles go beyond this chamber. It goes to what the founding of our country is about, equality under law for all, regardless of your economic and social status. And I want to also mention that the fair and affordable housing settlement, and we've heard a lot about what the settlement really says and what the settlement really means and what HUD is doing and what HUD is not doing. And I always maintain that the truth always at the end plays out. And I believe the truth played out in this particular instance concerning this legislation that we're voting on tonight, when the U.S. District Court said that Westchester County was in unambiguous breach of the settlement agreement because County Executive Rob Astorino vetoed that legislation. It took 3.5 years. 3.5 years to do something here tonight that we could have done, or we had done, 3.5 years ago. It took 3.5 years for Westchester County to be nationally looked at as an intolerant county, to be nationally lifted up as a county that is not concerned about people who are trying to get housing, and for us to vote on this piece of legislation that we all voted on tonight. And I believe the U.S. District Court and the Second Circuit Court of Appeals actually made it quite clear that this legislation needed to be passed. The county executive needs to sign it, and it should not have taken a letter from the U.S. Justice Department to the county attorney saying to him, we will move for sanctions. We will try to have you held in contempt personally and as well as the county for us to get this legislation here tonight. It could have been done 3.5 years ago by a simple phone call saying, look, I'd like to sign this legislation. If there are some things I'd like to have changed, here they are. Consider them. But I'd like for us to be known as a county that is not tolerant of discrimination. I think that's what it would have taken. Very simple. But I'm proud that there are many of us in this chamber tonight, many of us who understand that discrimination in no form should we be abiding. That in no form should we, many of us, and we will, and I can tell you as one legislator, that principally I prefer not to serve on any board than to serve and tolerate discrimination against anyone. And certainly, that's the reason I would say, Mr. Chairman, that I would be voting enthusiastically tonight to support this legislation, because I believe we send a message that Westchester County is a county, regardless of what those of us who are striving to make this county a county that we can be proud of, that is not looking to try to pit one population against another, that's not trying to divide based on race, based on economic status, based on gender, but are trying to pull people together and to look at the common goals and aspirations of all, equality under the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Other members. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't intend to try to compete with Legislator Williams' eloquence, but I do want to mention two specific facts that I think is important to the conversation and then just offer a brief opinion. I don't believe that this legislation allows anyone to live anywhere that they want. I think that this legislation provides many, many adequate provisions for landlords to turn down potential tenants that are not able to pay or for some other reason are not suitable tenants for their properties. However, I do think that this eliminates the one level of discrimination on income that will make the market for all of the people in economic situations as described by my colleagues have an easier time to have their basic needs, the basic need of housing, one of the most basic needs that every human has for affordable and safe housing to be met. I also want to say that this is, in fact, a woman's issue. The statistics released by the governor's office on this issue show that 74% of the holders of Section 8 vouchers are women, most often women with children, but there's also a very large population of elderly women. Over the course of a woman's life, she is more likely to live in poverty, and that risk increases as she ages. So I think when we're thinking about who comprises Westchester County, we do have to think about this as a women's issue and this as a women's issue that also impacts how women age and what opportunities they have as they age. And then my opinion is that I think we've had a lot of conversation about this. There's been a lot of discussion about some of the potential pros and cons and some ways that we can get over some of those issues. There's been a lot of anxiety around this issue. But I'll bet that when those fifth graders come through in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, this is actually going to be a non-issue. This is going to be something that's going to work out very, very well in our county. If there are procedural bumps along the road as we implement this, we've already made provisions in the legislation, really excellent provisions in the legislation that allows for landlords who unwittingly break this law to be educated. And I really feel that when we go forward, the only asterisks against our names at this legislature will be that we were people who took care of a problem that needed to be solved and that we move forward, and people are going to look back and they're not even going to realize that this was ever such a hot button issue, because it's going to be something that's very functional the way much of Westchester County policies are extremely functional. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Other members? Mr. Mazzano.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I rise to state for the record that I'm proud to vote for this law a second time. Voted the last time it was before our board several years back, and quickly tell you some of the reasons I'm going to vote yes tonight. You know, it's important to note that this is not the Section 8 housing voucher law. Correct. It's the source of income law. And that there's all types of vouchers that people may have from the government, veterans, disability, Social Security, where someone could be discriminated against when they have that and they're relying on that to rent an apartment in Westchester County. So that is an important part of this debate. Everyone, you know, in the newspapers are always Section 8, Section 8. This law is bigger than Section 8. This is about the source of income of people looking for an apartment in Westchester County. Now, we can all have our own beliefs and our own views on this issue. I'm going to say something on record that I happen to believe myself as a lawyer, as a legislator, someone that's been pretty active in this county for decades now. I do believe landlords, some, not all, not most, but there are landlords that use denying someone an apartment because they're carrying a Section 8 housing voucher. They do that in a discriminatory way. I believe there are landlords in this county that say, I don't take Section 8 because in their mind, that's a way to keep out minorities out of their apartments. That's something I believe. I understand that's a debatable issue, but that's one of the reasons I'm voting for this tonight, because I think we are combating discrimination. Second reason I'm voting on this law is that it's true, as Legislator Smith said, we don't have to approve this law tonight for the settlement agreement, the False Claims Act settlement case. But I do believe that it's time to settle an issue with the federal government. There's been too much drama in the interpretation of the settlement, in the battles with the federal government, and I think it's going to be nice tonight to close the book on this issue and have our county move forward. I think that's an important part of what we're doing tonight. Let's solve one of these debates with the federal government. Let's fix it. Let's move forward. There's other issues down the road we're going to have to deal with the federal government, but I'm pleased to see that one of the debates that we have that's going on with the federal government will be removed as of tonight. Lastly, I just want to say that prior to this going into committee, as you all know, my colleagues, I pushed very hard to have this law go back into committee because I'm very respectful of the processes of our Board of Legislators. And I really felt that it was very important for all the legislators, particularly new legislators, to sit in a committee meeting to review this legislation and have their say, one way or the other. Have some input into the law. I think it's so important. I know some people wanted to vote on this very quickly, and I understand that with the other issues looming large, but I still think, just a little commercial if I can, that let's always respect our processes. Let's always remember that we're 17 legislators. Our committee structure works really well, where we can sit together, all 17 of us, or parts of the 17 of us on the committee. Everybody has their say, and a vote is taken, and it goes to the floor, and we can make changes in the committees. I think makes our legislature work so well. That's why I push so hard There was a couple of minor changes made because we put it into committee, and I wanted to point out that my understanding now is we're going to have a much more votes tonight in favor tonight than we would have had we not sent it to committee. I know on my side of the aisle, there's several people now that are voting yes that may not have voted yes after they had the chance to go to a committee meeting and have their say and have their input. So a little commercial, if I can, to my colleagues. Let's always push to respect our processes, because I think they work, and I think they worked on this one, where we're going to have an overwhelming vote for this tonight. Westchester County is going to speak very clearly that the legislators of Westchester County, including members of both sides of the aisle, believe a source of income law to combat discrimination is proper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maisano. The members. Okey doke. Before we go to a vote on this particular item, I just wanted to say some things about this legislation, since I was one of the original sponsors of it. The real original sponsor of it is a former chair that Mr. Smith alluded to on the Board of Legislators chairs, and we should remember there's 340 some odd years of Board of Supervisors / legislators, and only from the time of Herman Geist are out in the hallway. And certainly we've had many different representations along the way. But Lois Bronze was the original sponsor of this legislation, with the advocates that have been mentioned along the way, and we certainly want to make sure that we keep that in mind while we're having the discussions, debates, and ultimately the vote tonight. I just have to say some clarity items, because one of the issues that we have had, and Leader Maisano was kind enough to highlight some of those along the ways in interpretation. And there was a bipartisan group of legislators that went down, including Mr. Maisano, including Mr. Williams, including Mr. Nona, that went down under the direction of then Chairman Bill Ryan to meet with the Justice Department on this agreement that was struck in August of 2009, which people should remember. And there was not changes to that piece of legislation. The legislation, the agreement, the housing stipulation agreement had a term in it, and that term was if the Board of Legislators failed to approve the document in its entirety without modification, then the county was going to go into the additional litigation phase for this particular item, that the settlement agreement would have been torn up and we would have moved forward with that. So for clarity, there was no reason for the administration, the county executive, Andy Spano at that time, to do anything other than say promote, because his administration was the one that created the legislation in front of us. So there was not a need to be more specific. I believe all of us wish there was some more specificity in there instead of some loose terms. But those loose terms work for us and against us, and that's what we should always keep in mind as well. That allows us to sit down with the federal government and do things like up in the northern part of the county, working with the county attorney's office and getting places that were excluded from the stipulation agreement to be included, which was at the county's request, which was beyond the four corners of the agreement, because it's flexible on both sides. So if one side can ask the question, so can the other. And because someone asked doesn't mean they're going to get it. Part of our assertion, Westchester counties, and we should always remember that, it's not the county executive or the Board of Legislators, it's Westchester County that is in this particular agreement with the federal government. We have always maintained that the study, the Rutgers study that allocated from the Housing Opportunity Commission, which this board not only extended and modified, were part of those numbers. So those numbers didn't pop out the air. They weren't an imagination of the federal government. It was something that the Board of Legislators and the county executive, in its assertions in the documents that we approved to send to the federal government as far as the analysis of impediments, counted upon allocations in different communities. So hopefully, those are obviously target numbers for what a community needs. It's not necessarily something that had to be lived up to, which was what Monitor Johnson stated in his letter to I believe, the county attorney, not to county executive, and said, you all have made this assertion that these numbers are part of the appropriations and allocations. Just tell us how those communities are going to live up to that. And that's your responsibility since you put it in your report. So we should try it, and Mr. Mazzano's good point on this is keeping the tone at a place where people could respectfully disagree, and having committee meetings gives us an opportunity to do that, and through this process from the stipulation agreement itself, when Mr. Ryan held at least 3 committee of the wholes in about a 3-week period, with Mr. Johnson being present at one of them when he was first appointed to be the monitor, to talk with us. The last piece I want to say is the discrimination piece is really big in this. And I know that we don't like to think it is, and we think that everything's hunky-dory, but it's not. You know, I can attest to that. It's not hunky-dory in Westchester County in 2013. There are still people that look at various factors and cover that up with economics. And the fact of the matter is, it's discrimination. It's wrong, and I don't believe anyone here, by the way, doesn't think it's wrong. They may have differences of opinion on the method of trying to resolve that question, but I do not believe anyone, whether you vote yes or no on this item, is in that position that doesn't believe that that's wrong. It's just a question of fixing it. And in our case in Westchester County, for one piece of the two, because Mr. Smith was very good on pointing out Mr. Johnson's point, which was A, that the study that he was completing, which is still draft, by the way. I know there was some nonsense about some report card being given to 31 communities, but as far as the monitor has stated, and he stated in his letter, it's still not come back to us yet as a complete document, and he said clearly, as Mr. Smith quoted, that he would come back to us with complete information. And by the way, he said there was a mistake. He said his staff made a mistake in their first analysis, which was why he wanted to get additional information from both the county and the local communities. And the local communities obviously get something from the housing monitor, you can kind of respond differently, but that's what he said. It was a mistake in the interpretation and the data that was provided to him, and he was correcting that. That should be good. I think we all should be waiting for that report, which we haven't gotten as of yet. But he also told us, because we were clear, and I know I was, because I signed this agreement, I was one of the people that was here that voted for it, there is no requirement for us to pass this piece of legislation tonight as far as the stipulation agreement is concerned. But Mr. Johnson was also clear that we had an obligation, based on our analysis of impediments document, to say what we were doing to affirmatively further fair housing, and source of income legislation was a way of doing that. That's where it's a requirement, if you will. It's not in the lines, but because HUD has to approve our analysis of impediments document, they said 2 items were left. Not from the May 13th letter that always gets quoted, but from the June letter that followed it. 2 things: source of income legislation and a zoning analysis. And tonight, we're going to put one of those in the rearview mirror, and I hope with the latest submission from the county on, I guess, June 15th, for the zoning analysis, we might put that behind us too. That's what I read from the Justice Department. And as a Yonkers and a proud Yonkers resident, with 4 of our Yonkers legislators here, some of us having been, at least 3 of us having been through that. Ms. Perez was probably not engaged at that time, right? But we had those 3 Yonkers legislators that were in the Yonkers version of a housing stipulation agreement, where Yonkers was 1 day from being bankrupt. And the Supreme Court's only modification was that the city needed to, before you could impose individual fines, personal fines, on the council members or put them in jail, which Judge Sand pointed out to do was that you first had to see whether the remedies that were being proposed would work first, meaning bankrupting the city. We closed libraries, we had a one-day-a-week garbage pickup, and the day that this order was signed, there was going to be layoffs in the city of Yonkers. So unless you were there, don't bring it up, because you don't know. And I could tell you, even today, that it's a very difficult situation because there were people that did not want to say they were from Yonkers. They would say they were from Westchester. They would say they were from Lower Westchester, but they wouldn't say they were from Yonkers. Your name's worth a lot more than that. And this is a step in getting our name back. Madam Clerk, a long roll call.
Mr. Harkam.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfarb. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Aye.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
No.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Approved 15-2. Item 6089 was held over at the June 3rd, 2013 regular board meeting. Appears here as an item of unfinished business for action from the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the amendment of the 2012 county operating budget in the amount of $24,896,986.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is an act that was thoroughly discussed in the Committee on Budget and Appropriations. This is an act that authorizes amending our 2012 county operating budget in order to close out the 2012 fiscal year. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members on this item. Madam Clerk, a long roll call.
Mr. Harkam.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Yes. Ms. Borgia. Yes. Mr. Burrows. Yes. Mr. Gelfarb. Aye. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Aye.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Approved 16-0. Item 6169 was held over at the June 3rd, 2013 regular board meeting. Appears here as an item of unfinished business for action from the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the amendment of the 2012 county operating budget in the amount of $23,748,019.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, as previously discussed, this is the other part of the 2012 budget amendment. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members on this item. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6069, at the June 3rd, 2013 regular board meeting, this item was held over. Appears here as an item of unfinished business for action. From the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county attorney to settle the lawsuit on behalf of the county against iPark Westchester for reimbursement of rental expenses incurred by the county in connection with the delay in obtaining occupancy and possession of the iPark facility located at 131 Warburton Avenue, Yonkers, and other related claims.
This item is being recommitted.
Item 6174 was postponed to a date certain of June 17, 2013 at the June 3rd, 2013 regular board meeting. Appears here for action, submitted by the chairman of the board, a home rule resolution requesting the enactment of Assembly Bill number 6946A and Senate Bill number 4653A, entitled an act to authorize the County of Westchester to discontinue the use as parkland of parcels of real property in the town of Greenberg for the purposes of completing certain proposed improvements to Jackson Avenue.
Mr. Harkam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would move to receive and file.
Members, been moved and received and filed. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote to receive and file this item as it was adopted in a special meeting. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Under standing committees, item number 5970 from the Committee on Appointments is the appointment of Jerome Fine as a member of the Westchester County Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors for a term to expire December 31st, 2015.
Ms. Williams.
The Appointments Committee met with Mr. Fine. He's a retired engineer, and he has impressed us with his knowledge and his enthusiasm and his belief in the need to approach soil and water conservation issues comprehensively and strategically on a regional basis. Therefore, on behalf of the Appointments Committee, I am happy to move his approval this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Members on this item, unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6043 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, an amended bond act authorizing the issuance of $625,000 in bonds, including $100,000 in previously authorized bonds of the county to finance capital project SNY 20, relocation of Hastings Force Main, North Yonkers Sewer District.
Ms. Myers.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, I rise to move that we approve this, this bond act for $625,000. The design for this relocation of the Hastings Force Main has been completed, and this bond act does include the $100,000 that was previously authorized to fund the cost of the design for this. This is a relocation of a force main due to some work by Metro North Railroad. And I will pass this over to Legislator Borgia for further comment.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a small piece of the work. It's only 545 linear feet, and it's an 8-inch force main. It has to be relocated because although the county has an easement for this land, it is on Metro North Railway land, and they've made some improvements to their platform, which has made accessing this particular area very difficult for the county. Once this work is done, though, this will continue to exist and will act as a redundancy in case there's ever any problems with respect to this area. Again, Government Operations felt this was a very worthwhile project, and we'd like to see it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6129 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $225,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BCC 05 Licensing Division IT upgrades.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is, as previously, as just now read, this is an issuance of $225,000 in bonds for this year, for 2013, that will begin the project of upgrading the licensing division IT in the county clerk's office. This has been split into 2 years' worth of work. 2013 will see an appropriation for request for $175,000 to complete the capital project, and the Committee on Budget and Appropriations approved this unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6139 from the Committee on Budget and Appropriations is an act authorizing the county to retain the law firms of Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood, Fulbright and Jaworski, Mintz, Levin, Cohn, Ferris, Glovsky, and Papeo, and Harris Beach to provide bond counsel services to the county in an of-counsel capacity to the county attorney on an as-needed basis for the period August 1, 2013 through July 31st, 2016.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is an act that will provide the county with bond counsel, as our current bond counsel contracts are due to expire at the end of June, at the end of this month. An RFP was put out. There were 13 law firms contacted, as well as advertisements and individual outreach to various firms. They received 10 proposals for bond counsel. This, I should note that this retainer agreement was amended today in Budget and Appropriations. The legislation was amended to actually remove the law firm of Mintz, Levin, Cohn, Ferris, Glovsky, and Popeo. The terms of this agreement would be for a not-to-exceed amount for $400,000 in the first year, $450,000 in the second year, and $500,000 in the third year, which would be 2016. The committee voted to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members on this item, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to stand and, for the record, and to put on the record that I am concerned about the utilization of minority and women-owned businesses, and particularly with respect to the retention of outside counsel and bond counsel in particular. I have expressed my concern to the county attorney via email communication, and I will continue to express those concerns publicly as I have done all along. I believe that the county need to be making greater efforts in inclusion of all of the persons who we do business with. We are a diverse county of a diverse population, and I believe that these services are capable of being provided, but I believe there needs to be a lot more outreach done to ensure that there's greater participation of minority and women-owned businesses in the procurement process. While I will vote to approve this legislation tonight, because I understand the need for us to have bond counsel in place, I want to ensure that my comments are for the record, that I will continue to be vigilant in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'm pretty sure on this particular item with the RFP process that was initiated, that there was an effort, if I recall correctly, to be inclusionary. So that effort needs to continue, as you said, Mr. Williams, because it should.
Just one point, as I indicated when I started, I did have email communications with the county attorney. I believe, as I said, the process of one law, I mean, I didn't want to get into the particulars, but since I don't want to be suggesting that some or other, the comments I made here are not comments that are credible or comments that need to be made, there need to be broader outreach. I think broader outreach will provide resources where other interesting parties who are qualified would be able to participate. I suggested to the, I will be glad to assist in whatever means possible in terms of providing information. However, I believe that process needs to be broader. There are a lot of information out there about available firms who can do this kind of work. And I just want to make sure that's on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Other members, Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't going to speak, but Legislator Williams prompted me to jump to my feet, and I hope that he will join me in my endless pursuit to get the procurement policy changed, because I do believe by doing so, I believe the policy in its current form is very inclusive, inclusive, or it's not allowing us to include a broader number of people, as the legislator points out, who are very capable of doing the work. There are a number of procurements that are exempt, if you will, a group of people, and we need to change that. I have tried to rally my colleagues on a number of occasions. The legislation has been pushed to the side by a certain committee. It has been promised to be reviewed time and time again, yet it never makes its way to the agenda. So to Legislator Williams' point, I do agree, and I hope he will join me in pushing that endeavor, where we can bring more people into the county under the tent to do work. It'll create greater job opportunities, and I hope it's something we can get done this session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Marcotte. Other members? Thank you. On this particular effort, the procurement policy requires that there's an RFP that goes out, and Mr. Williams' point, I think, is that, again, that we need to figure out a way to broaden the net, if you will, and to work through the county's executive, who does have a WMBE coordinator, to try to do that. They have been trying. It hasn't been successful, but from a procurement policy perspective, I believe that those items that we're working on are actually two different items, and we'll continue to work on those as we try to broaden the number of Westchester residents that are engaged in that. We have a couple other bills out there to do that with, whether it's Westchester First and that kind of thing, to try to get those things done. Madam Clerk, unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6148 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations. Resolution setting a public hearing on the proposed increase and improvement of facilities for County Water District Number 1 as set forth in the district report dated May 15, 2013, as may be amended from time to time.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I'd like to propose that we set a public hearing for July 17th, 2013 at 7:30 p.m., as that seems to be the time that a survey of legislators indicates that all will be most will be in attendance. Thank you.
Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote. What is it? The 15th?
17th.
What date's the next? Well, I believe that we're going for the next meeting, and what date is that?
17th.
I believe it says July 15th. That's just my mistake on the date. It's July 15th. The Monday.
I stand corrected. It is July 15th.
No worries, that was my fault. So July 15th, the next stated board meeting, July 15th. July 15th is the next stated board meeting, and that's when this is being set for. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the setting of the public hearing, July 15th, Monday at 7:30. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Motions, resolutions, call the districts.
Members, motions, resolutions, call of the districts. Mr. Williams, I'll join with you on Mr. Shabazz. Ms. Williams
I will also join with this.
as well. Other members? All right, Ms. Borgia. All right, if we could then please rise for all those members mentioned, names mentioned in the memorial resolutions, and observe a moment of silence. Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we adjourn and that we will reconvene on July 15th at 7 p.m.
Mr. Maisano is seconding that motion. Unless there's objections, members will take a short roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Harkin.
Yep.
Mr. Maisano. Yes. Mr. Williams. Yes. Mr. Chairman.
Yes. On the motion of Mr. Harcum, the board stands adjourned.